move into our final panel for day 2 at the media track and our final panel at the media track in general. Okay. So for those of you who are still here, we request you to please move up to the front so we can encourage our speakers. Please do occupy the front few seats. It looks very sad and empty. This conversation is going to be a discussion around the age-old conundrum of whether media reflects culture or shapes culture, with panel members sharing real-life examples of their work, emerging trends in inclusive marketing, and why should businesses adopt or reject these trends. We will be delving into the role of diversity in teams and the outcomes it can drive. So let's put our hands together and welcome our panelists. Babita Barua, CEO at VML India, with over 25 years of marketing and advertising expertise. Shraddha Agarwal, co-founder and global CEO of Grapes Worldwide. Arto Shvonen, founder and CEO of Mandag, an impact-driven facilitator and an urban activist. Deandra Coleman, who currently serves as Vice President, Marketing and Communications at anitab.org. She's a master at crafting brands, corporate communications, and building influential marketing campaigns that authentically reflect company values. And moderating this conversation, we have Ganga Ganpati, Marketing Leader, India at Publicis Sapient. Over to you, Ganga.
Hello. Yeah. Hey, thank you for those of you all who have stayed or joined us for this session. And thank you to my panelists for turning out in full force. Before we start, and we're going to be talking about a topic that's very, very future forward, which is media, tech, the influence of branding in the world that we see around us. But before we go there, I want all of us to take a moment and transport yourselves back many hundreds of years. Throughout recorded history, art, as you will know, has been a powerful tool used by those in power or influence to manipulate, manage the minds of the masses. Right? Kings and priests commissioned works of art to either propagate an ideology or to spread religious, political, and cultural beliefs. They used it to legitimize their power, commissioning portraits, large statues of themselves to solidify their authority and portray themselves as divinely chosen or superior. They used art to control social norms and shape societal values and expectations, including depicting idealized forms of males and females. Even then, there were norms of beauty that were being set by the way art was being created. And art has always been used to evoke strong emotions such as awe, fear, inspiration, to manage the way we want public to behave, right? And today when we go and admire historical works of art, like the Sistine Chapel or the pyramids of Giza, we admire it as art, right? But there is a story behind all of that money and power that was invested in creating all of that. Now, everything I spoke about as I was thinking about it this morning, I realize is true even for us today. Right? If you fast forward to where we are today and where the future is likely to be, the human ability to create pieces of communication, whether written or visual or spoken, and the role of media, if you look at what technology is doing today, it's really put that media on steroids, right? We are in fast forward mode all the time. Media is supercharged, and it's transforming the way we consume and produce information. And that's what we want to talk about today, not just communication, not just media, not just tech, but the responsibility that many of us in this room wield really, to think about the benefits as well as the risks that the intersectionality of media and technology carry. And the four leaders that we have here with us today, we want to talk about the innovative and impactful ways of delivering messages, and I'm sure you'll enjoy hearing from all of them. Right, I'm going to pose my first question to each of you in turn, and I'll introduce you as we go along, but if you want to add anything to the kind of work that you've done or what your companies do, please feel free to do that. Right, Shraddha, I'm going to start with you. Shraddha is co-founder and global CEO of Grapes Worldwide. She's much awarded and recognized for the client work that her agency produces. She has single-mindedly worked on streamlining the operations of the company to remain profitable while also doing good work. Is not easy in today's day and age, so hats off to you for that. And my question to you, Shraddha, as you run a multinational operation, as an agency and a custodian of brands, what is the effort that you make to tap into cultural trends that already exist, to amplify them, or do you see more work that may start creating culture?
Thank you for the introduction. Hello? Yes. Okay, perfect. Thank you for that introduction. I don't think anybody's introduced me like that. Okay. I think, today, if we look at media around us, it plays a very important role in terms of shaping our mindset and shaping the culture. Let's start with Bollywood or our films like Tollywood and Collywood as well. How many of you have watched this film called Rocky and Rani Ki Prem Kahani? Okay, so I'm sure you remember the Dhanlakshmi Laddu empire and the ad they made, right? And they had to pull that ad out. Why? Because of the fact that that did not represent the culture of the society today. That's what media does to us, right? Right from Bollywood to the ads that we see today. They shape what we see today. They shape what we can do in future as well. So it's very, very important. So I'll take an example of how we do it at our agency, right? So there's this client of ours called Catch Spices, Catch Foods. Now, when we create a film for them, we ensure that our film is not representing a woman cooking in the kitchen, right? It's very important to showcase how even a husband can end up cooking in the kitchen. So the TVC talks about Akshay Kumar, who's a Bollywood star, cooking food for Bhumi Pednekar, okay? How did we give it a twist further? The maid did not turn up. Now who'll cook? So the husband isn't asking the wife to cook today, right? But the maid hasn't turned up today. Now who'll cook? So again, the husband goes to the kitchen. Now these are very small nuances that you're trying to tell in the whole piece, right? How do you elevate this commercial further? So let's say now you've spoken about generic ways of husband cooking instead of the women cooking. But can we add more cohorts to this entire piece? And it's very difficult today from a media and technology perspective to do it. Let's say if you're making a TVC. But if you're doing a digital film, let's say on a Mother's Day, you can go more deeper in niche cohorts. Example, again for Catch Foods. For Mother's Day, we created a film about a prostitute who could not keep her child in her brothel because obviously if she's there, God knows what will happen to her, right? So one thing that we can't do is move away our child from us, but she actually gave away her child to an orphanage and anonymously used to go and give her food every day. The daughter doesn't know it's her. There's a mom, right, which exists for her. She doesn't know who's this person who's giving this food. Now, a traditional company who's just evolved to the expect of saying, okay, I can show a husband cooking, but can I show a prostitute in my film, right, is a huge step for a brand to take. And I think these are small things that you can do, keeping in mind your brand objective or even your business, that your sales should not harm. I'll not do an ad like this on TV, but let me take this route on digital at least. So these are ways you can do it. But just to add to this, now if you are a food brand, who should be my TG I'm showing to target on media? Female, 25 to 45, who basically cooks. But imagine if you are only being shown as a woman an ad about a male going to the kitchen and male is still seeing some car ad. He'll be like, I don't know who's cooking in the kitchen. You must be seeing some ads when men are going to the kitchen, right? So it's also very important for brands today to show the ads not just to women, but also to men. And that's how media plays a major role also in it.
Absolutely love that. And I want to bring in a personal example. A few months ago, I started writing about menopause at work, right? It's a topic that is hugely important, not getting the attention it deserves, and women are still trying their best to manage it on the side while acting like superheroes at work. I had friends from my class, my MBA class, right, as empowered, educated, powerful as they come, saying, I'm so glad you're doing this because now my husband will read it on LinkedIn and he'll realize what I'm going through. Imagine how difficult it is that women like us are not able to have these conversations at home. But then that is the power of media, right? And that's what people like us can really seek to influence. Thank you. Very emotive, and I think we can go on and on talking about these topics. I'm going to switch gears a little and move to another impact area with Arto Simonin. He's founder and CEO of Mandag. I hope I got the pronunciation almost right. A creative change agency merging marketing, strategy, journalism, and activism to drive impactful change. If you want to know how to turn sustainability into a competitive advantage, Arto is who you will tap into. So Arto, what do you think, in the field that you come from, is media playing a role that is powerful enough to shape culture, or is it merely reflecting what's going on around you?
Thank you. Yes, it's Mondag, means Monday. Because Mondays we need to make a change, not only during the weekends, the kind of the story behind it. So we work around like different parts of the world, Africa, Middle East, originally from Finland, so we have also work in Europe, and pretty soon in India as well. It's a really good question, and I could maybe highlight the importance of what kind of people are talking, who will have the voice in your team. So there's one example of what we've been working for years. We started to work in Afghanistan and Iraq 5 years ago, I think, but we need to run away from Afghanistan and everyone else, but we're still in Iraq. The case is related on kind of how we can help young people to build a peace in the country, which is like middle of chaos still and surviving from the war. So we were thinking like how we can do it, how we can build creative agency in Iraq. It sounds impossible, but there was only way, like we needed to, of course, find local like expertise and media guys from Iraq first, and we need to kind of start to do a mapping like what's happening. Then we started to look for the young guys, and we were recruiting people around Iraq from different provinces, and we started to continue the process year after year. So we started to build a community. So basically, this was the brief, and how we work with, like we first gave everything what we know about climate action and human rights stuff in global level, and then our partners bring in an NGO called Tech for Peace. They talk about journalism and ethics and fake news in the Middle East. Top organization, but they are helping us also to understand what kind of information you can believe in Iraq, for example, and these guys, we are learning from them. And then we move into the storytelling tools. So once you have information, we wanted to help them to like use tools what we use. We were filming, we were writing, and then we go into the action. So we did a lot of social media stuff and so forth. But what was my main point here was like how we could find the people. So we need to build a group of guys who feel they are in a safe space. They can be whoever they are. So we need to first think like from which religion they're from. We need to understand that. Then we need to understand like which provinces and which cultures they are from. Then we also needed to understand like especially what is their personal situation in their life. Because some of them, they are having super tough backgrounds after the ISIS in Mosul or some other part of Iraq. So also understanding what is their ability to work and what is their history is like, it really matters. We work a lot on that. And slowly we start to understand, okay, what kind of team could work and who could kind of start to build a community. And end of the day, it worked pretty well because then we were together for days and slowly we started to open up. And these guys started to find a way how they can trust each other. And our main mission there was to building a network of young people who can trust basically anyone right now, but they can trust each other. And it's still going, and we started to also build some campaigns and stuff, and it was really important because, like, let's say, for example, like climate issues, Iraq, there's a lot of information in English, but not really Arabic, like well done. There's a lot of UN language, but nothing what young guys wants to read or understand what it's about. Or there's not too many Iraqi-based NGOs who understands the culture. So we try to fix this huge problem, but at least we try to do that. So these guys start to talk in the language for young people of Iraq, what they really understand. And that is only possible because they are from there, and they understand their own culture and their country, which is like super diverse.
Thank you. What a beautiful example of saying that no matter what the technology, it's about being human first. And that's what none of us can lose or forget, because the power of thinking like a human and then using technology to our advantage is what all of us will be aspiring to in this forthcoming age. I'm going to move next to Babita Barua. Babita is CEO of VML India, one of a small group of rising women of power who are becoming CEOs of large network agencies. Congratulations, and may our tribe grow. Her agency has created campaigns, and you would have seen this, like Unplastic India for Times of India, or a super impactful and very innovative campaign called Killer Pack for Max Flash that prevented the spread of mosquito-borne diseases with a very, very innovative and creative idea. And I think we all feel very proud when agencies crack ideas like that, right? And Babita, as you create strategies and campaigns for brands, what is it that marketers have an appetite for? Does it take courage to disrupt and build new culture in the media environment that we are in today? What is it that you're seeing?
Thank you. So before I get into this, again, thank you for the introduction. The VML may not be a name familiar still, because we are at a very sweet spot of, if you know of JWT or Wunderman Thompson, HTA, that is really the agency. And earlier in the year, globally, HTA, Wunderman Thompson, JWT, all the same agencies, name changes, they came together, or the entity came together with VML YNR, which was, we all come from the WPP group. And VML YNR was a more, a modern, contemporary capabilities agency. And JWT stroke Wunderman Thompson is pretty much brand building, consumer insights, consumer behavior, etc. So the coming together of both, the name on the door is VML, and it is really about end-to-end solutions. I started off as an intern many years ago and ended up as a CEO, and I'm totally proud of the fact that, I'm actually the first woman in in the company to be the CEO, so thank you for that. So it's good to be here and share the stage with folks. I love the story. Thank you so much, and also the example. Marketers have an appetite for disruption when it comes to fame for the brand and when it comes to growth. Because finally, it is about business. And the pressures on business are so much now that beyond the point, I think even if I look at 10 years earlier, the kind of monies that were there to spend on an idea, which would be disruptive, but may not perhaps have a direct impact on sales or growth, was fine, because you had time to build the brand over time, and you had the patience, the street had the patience, and I think patience is something where we all crave for that, but we don't get that enough. So what is happening is now, is there good work that influences behavior? Absolutely, and we've heard examples already. But the question I often ask myself, and I feel a lot of industry folks should ask themselves, and perhaps even my team is not asking enough, right, is what is a business that we are really in? Am I selling like a mosquito coil or a beverage or a coffee, or am I trying to solve a problem with somebody in the country, and I'm talking India now because most of the brands are for India, somebody in the country is facing a problem or is not in a happy place, and because of what we do, some problem somewhere is getting solved. And if we look at us as problem solvers of society, then the kind of work that will come out will be on brand, but will be a tad different, or will be quite different from if you look at a brief like, here's the product, and here's what we need to sell, and here's what we need to achieve. So it's a mindset change for sure. The second thing is a lot of marketers do have an appetite for changing behavior because they have seen examples. And again, I love the example you gave. We've also had examples of, and sorry, I don't take brand names because of protocol, but we know that, right? We've had washing machines which are about gender again, people, a husband, wife, couple, whatever, sharing their burden together. We've had examples of, in fact, women and hygiene and how important it is to, first of all, understand that there are certain days in a month where you do have certain issues, and do we have enough education on hygiene? We've had solutions, and campaigns on hand washing. And this is before COVID, which is hand washing that leads to infectious diseases, where there are villages where a lot of children do not even live till the age of 5. And then there is a whole control group done to actually come up with data. And I feel this is the big difference. Today, if you can be authentic instead of just storytelling, and if you can back up what you have, even if it's a film that you make, which is a story, but in the other medium, you back it up with, this is the fact, this is where it actually happened, this is where it was inspired by, this is where we have done the test and it has made a difference. I think it goes down very, very well with the audience today, because everyone is making content. So it's not a race for better content as much as, do you really mean what you're saying, or are you doing a lip service? So that's pretty much my learning and what the agency is grappling with.
Fabulous. So that's purpose backed by data, backed
Right.
by proof.
Proof.
Right?
Proof of concept always.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
that's recharge purpose, right? Which is what marketeers will invest on. Deandra Coleman, she lives at the heart of the Anita B. org, who owns the Grace Hopper property. I don't know if I'm saying it right, but please feel free to correct me. As VP of Marketing and Communications there. And with multiple fabulous roles, and also teaching, consulting, coaching, I loved your profile. Her wide-ranging views and topics that influence community will be super insightful. Deandra, as you work on social and commercial strategies with your partners, is there an example of either tapping into existing trends or building something new? And how has your choice of media supported that?
Yeah, so thank you for that. I appreciate it. And I'm very happy to be here representing AnitaB.org and with all of you on the stage. So I want to touch really quickly on something that you were talking about, marketers being problem solvers, right? Because I think that that's at the heart of everything that we do. We are able to take a step back and see the full picture and then look down the line at what the outcomes could potentially be if we do this or if we don't do this, right? And I think that at the heart of being problem solvers, when you're working within any agency, you need to ensure that you have diversification, right? And so again, what I've heard from your example, from your story, is that representation matters. And we were talking about the question around, does media shape culture or does culture shape media, right? It's kind of like what comes first, the chicken or the egg. And if I may just back up very quickly, I think that what ends up happening is that culture has to spark something. There has to be a spark in order for media to sit up and pay attention. But then once that happens, I really believe that media helps to shape culture in that it allows people to see themselves represented in whatever form of media there is. And so I'll give an example very quickly. And I can speak from the state's perspective. When we start seeing certain representation in TV shows, in movies, very specifically, what happened was when we started seeing women high-powered attorneys or women doctors represented on TV, there was a spike in girls and women wanting to go into those fields. There was a spike because it allowed them the permission to see themselves in those roles, right? And then what I think is happening is that tech is soon to follow. We haven't really gotten that representation for women in tech in order to give girls that permission to really step out into their true brilliance. So I just wanted to kind of address the media and the culture. And when we talk about diversification and representation and being those problem solvers, we have to, it is incumbent upon us to ensure that we have on our teams people who represent diverse cultures who can then problem solve efficiently. I think a lot of times what happens is that we don't, the diversification isn't there and we don't have the proper representation in order to sit back and say, how could this outcome affect different cultures? And when you do have that, what that allows us to do is to bring it back to the business at the end of the day, right? Because at the end of the day, we're wanting to propel businesses forward and be able to foresee whether or not that diversification and that representation and having those different opinions will ultimately lead to brand failure and problems or lead to brand success. And so I just, within the work that I do, always being forward thinking, always ensuring that there's diversification, always ensuring that there is some level of representation, and ensuring that the members on my team, if they don't have those cultural references, ask questions. Like, it's okay to ask the question and say, hey, I don't know something. I don't know what this would do. And so if you can inform me, if you can help me understand this, I don't have the perspective that you have, right? And it would be horrible of me to assume that I could speak on your behalf. And so asking the question at the end of the day allows us to problem solve faster than if we don't, and we move forward trying to solve problems that we really don't have the answers for.
Lovely. And since you already started talking to Arto, I'm going to ask him to share his perspective on what's the ethical responsibility that marketers and advertisers carry to represent diverse audiences respectfully, right? Or anyone who's in the industry to drive change. If you could share examples of when you've had to consciously lead with an ethical aspect or remind somebody of the ethics of a situation, I think that would be lovely.
I could reshape the question a bit. I would say what are the possibilities, not responsibilities, because so many people think who are not working in creative industries, so creative people are like doing good stuff and they have a heart in the place. But creative industries are really traditional, super traditional people around there. We are just living in our own bubble. So my background is from advertising like ages. I jumped into the one big one when I was 18 or something. I resigned from there because I was really ashamed of what I was doing for a living. Because I understand we have a amazing tool of branding, comms, marketing, we can solve big problems. But I could choose my clients, but my agency never did, so I walked away. But then I understood I didn't know anything. I know how to sell stuff. I know how to build ideas, pitch decks. I'm good at it. I can kind of package the information really quickly. But then how I can use it in a better way. And then I start to walk around trying to figure out how I can learn. So I think this is the first thing. Creative industries, marketing, communication agencies are pretty outdated. I mean, there are brilliant people in there, but they are not really aware of what is happening in the world. So we need education. We need to mentoring systems for creatives. We need to have a partnership between, like you said, we are learning from each other. I think NGOs, for example, or researchers can do more with creatives to help creatives to understand. So then we can avoid more greenwashing, because quite often greenwashing happens because agencies are just following the money. Or they don't know they are greenwashing because they believe their clients, and their clients are not always telling the truth. So that's the problem. They purposely do greenwashing or unpurposely. There are accidents happening because they are just following the money, they don't take the lead, and creatives should take the lead because we have a really, really amazing tool how to use it. Another thing, personally, I feel like really important, like when I do work in different cities, is like we work with our partner agencies, but outside of that, it's super important to jump away from our bubble. So I'm trying to find activists, people from the grassroots level, who are just starting something new. And even the local agencies don't always find them. So this is social media is a good tool for this, using that a lot. One case, we work quite heavily in COP28 in climate talks, Dubai. Last year, now is 29, is over, but 28 was the main, kind of the big event where the first time there are more companies around than ever before. So there were a lot of NGOs wondering like how to talk to these guys. They don't believe them. They think they're greenwashing. Quite often that happens. But the point was like they didn't have a connection. They didn't know how to talk to each other. Their working cultures are really different. So companies are thinking like these NGOs, they don't really make any impact, or no one knows them, or NGOs think like they are just greenwashers companies. So creatives could be around to build the bridges, building the platforms, building different kinds of partnership strategies, how to help public sector, private sector, NGO in the same table. That's the only way. So creatives actually can build the bridge. Another thing what happened in COP, I can't mention the names of our clients, but then, the political situation was tough. I'm not saying like what is my opinion here is like, but in Emirates there were a lot of like complaints, of course. But at least whatever you think, but you need to be aware. You need to understand what the media is running around global level, what's happening there, because of fossil fuels and money, basically. That's the one thing what creatives and agencies should understand. I felt that was sometimes missing, so then they are building campaigns. We didn't react on the existing problem. And then something like what I saw, like coming back to these diverse teams, it was interesting to see like there are a lot of events and everyone was highlighting how young people need to have a voice, how young people have to be on the stage. But normally it was just only like they were walking around, they were like modeling in the social media campaigns. But I mean, after the event, no one remembers them. We call it young washing. It's one of the biggest problems nowadays. You could just listen to them for a minute, then you kick them out. So you use young people as a tool, but not really taking on the board to make decisions. So I think this greenwashing stuff is complicated, but I think creative industry or creative agency can really solve this. And I think the last thing is like, it's beautiful to be here because we had really nice conversations before. Like I would like to personally do a lot of cooperation, and we need to work together, like everywhere. And I feel because this industry is full of competitions, award ceremonies, so everyone is kind of against each other. But I think we should take the second stage, jump away from there and start to work together and building like common understanding and bridges as well.
Beautiful, right? And that's the kind of change that we need to be able to drive as humans. How do you amplify that, right, Shraddha? We were talking about this earlier, where you leverage the power of creativity, the insights, and how do you use technology to really amplify the impact it can create?
Before I answer that question, I'm already doing this. Yesterday, I was sitting with another founder of an independent agency. Last week, I was in Bombay, and there was another woman who was winning a runner-up award for the non-network head agency of the year. And we all realized that, we don't catch up just because we think we are competition. And we genuinely decided, like 5-6 women who are founders of multiple companies and agencies, to come together and start a small group where we can actually just meet each other, exchange our problems and our patterns and etc., and empower each other rather than trying to compete with each other. So I think that's a brilliant thought. We should definitely do that more.
There's more than enough work out there, right? There's no need to compete with each other.
Exactly. And trust me, there's so much shopping happening around. In fact, one of the co-founders of another agency, she called me, she's like, this client is going, why don't you just pitch them? I've already recommended your name. So I think that's so nice to have things around. But coming back to the example of how can we use technology or how can we represent this better, right? So I'll take another example of a corporate brand. And trust me, the problem that you're facing with brand where they're saying sales is important and hence they're not doing such campaigns. It's easier to crack it with corporate brands. They don't have a problem of sales, right? So this is in line with what you said. How do we showcase, let's say, women representation in different professions, okay? So I'll take an example of a farmer. Anybody know what percentage of female farmers are full-time worker on any land? Random guess, what percentage are female farmers as full-time workers today on farms in India? 20%? 2%? Okay. Anyone else? 0.5? 1%? 85% of full-time workers on Indian land are female farmers.
And unpaid.
And unpaid. Because they're their farms. They're entrepreneurs, rich ones. That's the number, right? Now imagine you guys sitting here. What happens to all of us as we were growing up? We had our syllabus books shown an Indian farmer as a male farmer. So we assumed a farmer is generally male, right? We ask a kid to draw an Indian farmer, he'll end up or she'll end up drawing a male farmer. You ask somebody on the road, tell me a name of an Indian farmer, and they'll be going like Ramu, Kalesh, Rohit, something, right? You go to a government portal, scheme portal today, and you'll find all banners made of male farmers. The protest that happened for farmers, and if you look at media and all those videos back on news channels, you'll see male farmers, right? In fact, the statue of Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan in Bombay is a male farmer. What are we doing, right? Forget this. Let's type Indian farmer on Google and see the images. It's all male farmers, right? This is a problem. So one problem is if we represent them more, we'll have more people working in that domain. Another problem is they're not being even represented right, right? And how do we solve a problem like this? So we literally, how do we use tech in this, right? So what we did is we actually went on Google and wrote Indian farmer and saw the representation. It was almost 98% male farmers. How do you change it? So we looked at where is this coming from? It was almost 50-60% of that content was coming from journalists, basically India Today, NDTV, or any other news paper, right? 30-40% was coming in from stock websites, Shutterstock, Adobe Stock, etc. So the only thing we did is we went to journalists, folded hands, requested them, next time you write an article about an Indian farmer, please show a female farmer. We also wrote to stock footages videos, but they didn't do anything about it. And we were able to change the representation of female farmers on Google from 8% to 37% without spending a dime, right? Yeah, and it took 5 months. It was not easy because it was not a paid activity. We were not paying for any of these journalists writing these articles. Now, you know, as agencies, we come up with these ideas, but you need a great client also to say that, yes, I'm ready to do this idea, right? And that's when somebody, whether they do it in the turn of getting an award or just genuinely doing a CSR activity or doing something, advertisers play a huge role in making this change. And since this is the last session, I'm going to take 1 more minute.
Please do.
I was in Amsterdam last week, and I'm a vegetarian, so I've been in a... How many of you are vegetarians here? Okay, you're a vegetarian? Oh, wow, amazing, you're also a vegetarian, okay. You know, we all keep coming to this fight of vegetarian versus non-vegetarian, and we like, how can you kill animals, and how can you do all of this? I think as vegetarians, we are not killing animals, we are raping cows, right? Because we drink so much milk. Do you know this statement called as cow gives milk, taught to us in every school? Cow never gives milk. Once a cow is pregnant, she's supposed to lactate milk for her calves. If cow gives milk, then women also gives milk. That means we should be milked for someone else. We don't teach the right things to our kids, right? That's where the representation is going wrong. And that's what needs to change. So every time we do something, and that's what I keep telling my clients, that let's do one part of that activation in school. Because if you change the behavior in school, you'll be able to change mindsets.
Lovely. Anybody else want to have a point of view on this, please? Okay, then I'm going to move that into execution again with you, Babita. What are you seeing as emerging trends in inclusive marketing, either in India or other markets? And why would businesses adopt this, right? What would we do to influence businesses to do it beyond the billings and the obvious problems? And I see so many young people here who are the future of our industry and our business. So would love to hear what you're seeing happening there.
Yeah, so I'll start off with the most uninspiring part of it, which is what you said about follow the money. And today the money is not just in the hands of, say, the man who's earning it. And with data, again, we know that. So you have youth who have money to spend. You've got women who are being more economically independent. So just a pure math of who do we need to talk to sell something has itself become much more inclusive. Because economically, the purse strings are not just in the hands of one gender or one earning member alone. That's why I said this is not the inspiring part, but it's the reality. So
it's the truth.
It's not like, somebody's wanted to really talk to women or this, but it's just that it makes sense because today she can go out and buy something or she can go out and influence something, right? And of course, to make it happen, you come up with very inspirational and good work. That's number one. Number two, and this is pretty much now what you're saying, is this generation, and I can see a lot of young people here, we are more conscious than ever. Yes, you're right, not to the extent of which we should, but I think the whole example that you gave of cow gave milk, etc., that somewhere it's printed on our foreheads. I have a 19-year-old daughter, she's just turned 19, and she actually questions a lot of these things, which I would never think of even questioning because I took it for granted. And therefore, the kind of work that we are doing now in agencies in terms of communication is becoming more inclusive. To give an example, let's start with the basics of skin color. Earlier, when we looked at casting for our films, etc., you had to have fair, great hair, great nose, great appearance. All our casting models would be that. Today, if you just look around, it is actually definitely not the case, yeah? And some of the best work is actually when it is more representative of what is the real world and the real mix out there. The other inclusivity comes from the team itself. And again, we've spoken about it. Increasingly, the gender ratio, the culture ratio, the diversity ratio is very, very strong or stronger than what it was even 10 years ago. So for example, even in our company, DEI across the world, not just in India, is one of our KRAs. It is my KRA. And therefore, when we are hiring, we have a mixed bag and we have a mixed team. And therefore, naturally, the work becomes much more inclusive because it is not created by one sector or by one gender or by one culture, like in India, like one zone of creative or strategy of this. That's the second thing. Who are the creators behind the creation, right? So we talked about who has the money to spend. We talked about the young generation who is much more conscious, and we are talking to them. And the third is, of course, the creators. The other thing is, again, coming to Tier 2 and rural India, the spends there and the proliferation of technology makes consumerism very, very prevalent there in terms of goods and services which were not there earlier in this. So for example, commerce, you can order something from Amazon and I think almost all pin codes in India are covered. And therefore, the aspiration for lifestyle, for wearing things, for using things, for reading books, etc. are much more because it is accessible. And because of that, the kind of communication that we do, so just to give you an example, one of our mobility brands, two-wheelers, we are really talking about what would be some of the examples that we would do. And this is a penetration brief, right? And really the examples around the room and we were just brainstorming were amazing. It's like, your daughter or the sister can go to the college in the next thing. You can actually, as a homemaker, you can actually start off your business because you can sell things online. You can learn tutorials from YouTube or this and do online. So it's amazing. And then you can use, of course, because it's about mobility, then you can use that to go to nearby towns and sell it. You can do. So those examples also make me realize because, one of the things that I'm so passionate about, in fact, I'm from the Northeast, and I mentor so many women entrepreneurs there who just come to me. All my weekends are spent mostly in talking to women, students or entrepreneurs. And I do that because I never had that. And I feel this inclusivity, the conversations that are happening around us, itself will lead to far more inclusive work as we go into the next 2 or 3 years.
Fabulous. And on that point, Deandra had a lovely example earlier about the power of inclusivity in teams, right? Representation in teams, and what can happen when it's not there. Finally, technology or the media we use is only an enabler. But what are the humans doing to ensure that, we continue to communicate right? Would love to hear from you.
Yeah, so technology is just a tool. I think we've said that before, right? We have to be very sure and cognizant of the fact that we are humans first. And it all starts with our thoughts, our actions, and we tell the technology what to do. And I think that if I may touch on DEI a little bit, right? I'm hoping that all of us are aware of what is going on in the world with DEI right now and the attack that it is under. And there's been a lot of discussions around the need to rebrand organizations that are DEI based, which AnitaB.org is, very much so. And there's been a lot of thought around how do we do this? How do we rebrand? And I'm not talking about AnitaB.org, I'm talking about organizations in general, right? How do we take who we historically have been and rebrand it in a way that is palatable for those and fits the definition for those who think that DEI is not important anymore, and all of the things that trickle down from what DEI brings to the table, the inclusivity, the diversification, all of that. And if I may, because I don't know if we're at time or what, but we're disruptors, so we'll continue on. I want to give a brief example of how this can be possible as we move forward in this new world around DEI and the attack on it. How many of us in the room are mothers? Let me just, show of hands, moms in the room? Okay. I liken it to feeding your children vegetables, right? And roll with me here, I'm going somewhere with this. They push back sometimes. They don't want to eat their vegetables, they fight against us, they say it's disgusting, they don't like it, there's protests, there's all of these things. And as women in general, we are very good at masking things and turning something that is awful into something that is fantastic, right? And so what do we do sometimes as moms? We take the vegetables and we chop it up really finely. We might put it in a blender. We might mix it in hamburger meat or in, spaghetti sauce or something like that. But to ensure that our children get the nutrients, we make sure that it is still in there, but we have rebranded it as something different and delicious, and it looks completely different to our children, right? So we are master rebranders by nature. We're like, okay, you don't like it? Not a problem. I'm still going to give you what you need. I'm going to make sure that it looks different. So when you look at it, you think you've won, right? You think you've won the end game, but that's not really what's happened here. And they gobble it up, and maybe when they grow older, they come back to us and they say, hey, Mom, thanks so much for helping me grow into a strong, mighty human being. It's because of you. And that's what I liken this attack on DEI to, right? They're children. Their frontal lobes aren't developed yet, right? They can't have emotional regularity yet. And so they throw temper tantrums because they don't think that it is going to benefit them. But we know better, right? All of us in this room, we know better. So it's fine. We'll give you what you need. we'll mask it, we'll make it something else, we'll rebrand, we'll repackage it, but later on down the line, you're going to see that you really needed it. And I don't know if that really answered your question. I'm sorry, I'm, again, a disruptor, so I'm just going to go off and talk about whatever. But I thought it was really important to touch upon what is happening to DEI in the world of marketing and communications. You know, we can talk about the media and how it covers DEI, the attack on DEI, all of those things. But at the end of the day, I think that we always need to realize that we are humans first. Marketing has to do with who we are at our core, and then and only then, when we get it right, can we disperse it through media and technology.
Can I add?
Please.
Sorry, go ahead, please. Are you sure? Okay. I love that sentence, you know. Why? Because when I sit on a table with my client, looking at their problem and listening to their brief, I put myself first up, right? As women, we are very protective of how we feel. We don't want to say it out loud. So for example, if I ask you guys, how many times do you masturbate? Nobody will answer this question. Take care. I masturbate 3 times a week. Will you answer that question? No. Okay, do I come every time I have sex? No. Will you answer that question in front of public? Maybe no, right? The problem with us is, or for example, I'll tell you what, I think I have used chickpea flour, basically besan in Hindi, right? The amount of besan I have used on my skin because I was dark is more than the pink color used in Barbie film, okay, throughout my life. I'm telling you this because my parents killed me over the fact that you're dark and you're not going to get married because my sister was fair or my sister-in-law was fair, right? And I used to stand with besan all over my body in winters like this, you know, bubbling over because I wanted to become fair. And I was always underconfident because of that, right? Till I turned into this person who became overconfident about what I feel. You know what? And trust me, I'm not boasting this, but today I'm 40 and I look as good as my sister. I'm actually a little tad better than my sister because she did not pay attention to herself, right? She now calls me and tells me, okay, what should I buy next? Which brand, what dress, there's a party coming over, can you send me over your clothes? What should I buy in makeup, right? It is not easy, guys, okay? And it is difficult. I was not paying attention to myself. I turned into a tomboy as a kid because I thought, oh, I'm not pretty, let me just become a tomboy, right? But it was not required. What I did when I started working was I paid attention to how I dress up. I paid attention to just learning how to do makeup. I can do a 21-course meal makeup. Yeah, it's not funny, okay? Because how you present is your first impression. Second is what you talk. And when you talk, talk from your heart. Put yourself in the situation and say, how do you feel? Nobody's judging you. There's 1.3 billion people in this country. Nobody has time to judge you. Let me be very honest. I'm telling you, my parents wanted me to die one day because I left home for a job, right? And now they're very proud of me. So nobody is bothered, and the time will pass. So it's very, very important to just put yourself in the situation and speak out loud of how would you react as a consumer. And I'm telling you, tell me which influencer has an IMRB report and they're making millions of money. Do they have research papers? But they're able to put up what they feel and you still like it, right? It's not like an agency who's supported with research paper, data, facts. But we still like those influencers because they're talking about what they feel. And that's what we all should do.
Yes, I was just commenting about your point on DEI's, what's happening in the world. It's really important now to react. And I think it's like we shouldn't talk like DEI strategies like alternative thing of something. It has to be in the actually its core of everything. So when we build on sustainable strategies with different kind of organizations, we always need to say like, you do this first, because otherwise nothing works. I mean, there's no profitable teams. There are no business. I mean, there's money also behind diverse teams. There are more profitable ones. We know that. Research is done. So it's in the core, and I think I think the word is tough now for some people, but also we need to tell it in a way like you understand that this is where we need to start. Because sustainable living is now only possible for only a few people in the world. And I think we need to change that. That's a huge, huge problem, and DEI is playing a major role on that.
Absolutely, and every effort makes a difference, right? So nobody should shy away from saying that one word or the one sentence that you believe will change the world. I'm going to open it up for questions if anybody wants to ask. Can we have a mic? Thank you.
So yeah, I wanted to touch upon what you said about DI being under attack. The narratives that it's under attack by are narratives that are typically the sort of key vector, sort of appeal of those narratives is one of simplification. Whether it's a binary concept of gender or the fact that the way that things have always been or the way that things can continue to be. And sort of the DI perspective, the more evidentiary-based perspective, that is one of nuance. So how do you sort of counter those attacks when you have to introduce complexity to an audience that wants less of it?
That's a really good question, right? So it's this concept that two things can exist at one time is what the thought potentially is there. Repeat your question for me. Sorry.
How do you, I'll reframe it in a way if it makes it easier. How do you sort of explain the complexity and nuances of any given issue or scenario or phenomena, whatever you want to talk about, when a large part of the audience or the audience with decision-making powers wants, they don't want a dossier, they want a one-page, summary. There's literally something that President-elect has sort of asked for multiple times. We know this. So how do you then construct a narrative where you have to introduce, many concepts, nuance, context, history, theory, when someone just wants, a version of me good, they bad, sort of narrative?
I honestly would say, who cares? Right? I don't really care what you want. I'm not going to dissect myself and my story to make it fit your narrative. So my challenge back to you would be yourself, right? Or give them the story that is your truth. And if they don't like it, that's their problem. The onus isn't on you for them to like whatever it is that your truth is. And that, to me, is, I don't know, maybe that's just my personality. At the end of the day, I'm like, I don't really care what it is that you want. Is that answering your question or no?
A little bit, but not. So I can reframe it in touching upon the example you gave.
Yeah.
When you gave the example of, chopping up the vegetables and putting it in the hamburger, what would that entail in terms of, say, countering the attack against DEI? How would you then sort of, what are the vegetables in this context, and how would you chop them up and put them into the story?
Can I add just one perspective to that, as you respond, which is to say topics like this have actually crossed the inflection point today. And the power of technology is that it has democratized the ability to create, produce, as well as consume ideas. And while the world will always be polarized, right, I think there is enough ammunition on both sides for people to not feel like they're losing out or they will completely lose out. Even in the country that we're talking about, I very much doubt that voices can actually be quelled. But you live there, Deandra, so tell us.
So you're asking what those vegetables are, right? What are the things that we need to reframe, is what I'm understanding your question to be. If there is a topic that is sensitive, right? I think what has to happen is the thought process has to come in and say, what are the things that what are the hills we will die on, right? What are those things that are non-negotiable for us? And then what are those things that we can pull back a little bit, where we're just releasing the gas? We're not necessarily letting off of the gas completely, but it might have to just be thrown down the field a little bit because it's not as important right now. So working backwards is really going to be my advice. What are the outcomes that we're looking for? What are the things that can be removed from the table? And then what are those things that can be finely chopped up to mix it into something else and be given a different way, right? So if you're asking what are those vegetables, it really depends, and I'm going to use food, right? Are we giving them broccoli? Are we giving them cauliflower? Are we giving them bell peppers, right? If the bell peppers are the things where we're like, we don't really need those right now, get them out of here, and then chop up the broccoli and the cauliflower and give that to them instead. I hope that answers your question. Okay.
Okay, if there are, yes, of course.
It's like, I like the discussion. One thing is like once you have kind of super diverse opinions, it can be based on religion, it can be based on gender, it can be based on politics or whatever. It's like once we start to try to find something where we can go forward, it's like we can try to find something what is in common. It can be hobby, it can be dancing or singing or food or whatever. I mean, people start to respect each other more like a human being and person, instead of like what is their political background is. Then we can move forward, and maybe we can do something more together as well.
Lovely. And just to close that out, what I'd say is that where we stand today is because we stood on the shoulders of the brave people who came before us, right? And the duty we have is to continue offering that leg up to the generations that are going to come after us. So no matter what the environment says, to never shy away from doing the right thing and fighting for what we believe in. Thank you so much for that inspiring conversation, and thank you so much to the audience. Thank you.
New gen in your face, we about that. Me plus we see the future, gonna get that. 10 toes in, can you feel that, feel that, feel that? Any time of the day, better make way when we pull up. On a new wave when I come up. We got the high-end product, get the conduct. Business, professional, body, phenomenal. Built in a way unstoppable. Our MO, incomparable. The style, the skill, impeccable. You know, that's what we do. We about to turn it up a notch. Better not be confused. No, we ain't stopping anytime soon. Get that. We're about to break the chain that thought that force and you can't do that. Tide us down, now we combat. New gen in your face, we about that. Me plus we see the future, gonna get that. 10 toes in, can you feel that, feel that, feel that? Get that. We're about to break that chain that thought that force and you can't do that. Tide us down, now we combat. New gen in your face, we about that. Me plus we see the future, gonna get that. 10 toes in, can you feel that?